Our final topic in this chapter, as far as Photoshop's vector capabilities are concerned, is setting type. However, setting type is not Photoshop's strength. Think about it. It's pixels, ultimately. It's not vectors that are resizable like InDesign and Illustrator. So if you're going to set a lot of body copy, Photoshop is not going to be where you're going to do it. You're going to do it in InDesign, maybe Illustrator. So the good news is it behaves almost identical to Illustrator, which is also going to be how InDesign works. So let's just create a new file, new document here in Photoshop of any size again. And we're going to look at our type options. So switch to the type tool. And right now, if I look up at my top option bar, I see the font, the style of it, the size, and it's going to be centered and red as of right now. So if I click once with my clicker, this is going to be point type, just in Illustrator. So whatever we write here, whatever we write is centered because I clicked in the center and I had centered type on. And notice that that makes a type layer. If we click away and come back to our type tool again, and this time I'm going to do left. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I'll go center here. That's the centered one. I'll make a new layer and left this one. And whatever I write on this one stays to the left or to the right of my insertion point. So that's pretty simple. Every time you click with the type tool, it's going to make a new type layer. And you guys know that from using this repeatedly. I'm just going to dump those two layers. And something else you know is that with the type tool, you can drag out a box and type a bunch of things in here, and it will wrap when it hits the boundary of your box. And if you make your box smaller, the type is going to wrap within it. And if it's overset, you're going to know that as well. Another option that you can have is if you hold Command while scaling, your type also gets bigger or smaller or stretchier. It matches your box. We can change our font, you guys know all that, and because we have the whole thing selected, it's all in red. However, if we were to come into here and just select one letter, we could make each letter a different color in Photoshop, which is kind of unique. That's not something you can do in other programs. All right, I'm going to dump that one as well. And I'm going to go back and just click something here and write warped type. And I'm going to make it a lot bigger. And in our option bar to the right of the color swatch, we have our warp, create warp text option. And this is going to look familiar. We can arc. And again, we have all the same options we saw in Illustrator as far as distortion and how we're making this warp. So we have all of our different options, and you simply get to that by clicking on the text warp. And notice that it shows it over here with a little bit different icon. Whoops. So we know that we have something different. A warp is applied to that. Another thing that we can do is if we type in something here, take this down in size a bit, we have this button to toggle the character and paragraph panels. So this is where we have more options as far as leading, kerning, the height of our letter forms, if we do all caps, underline, subscript, superscript, etc. So we have additional options within the character and the paragraph. So just like in Illustrator, I encourage you, you're not going to be setting a lot of type in Photoshop. That's not what you want to do. But if you do have, say, 2 paragraphs, you just hit that one paragraph return between them, and then you set your space between paragraphs to be whatever number you want here. So you can have 18 points between paragraphs or 6 points, whatever you want. So all of this is exactly like Illustrator, and it will be very familiar to you when you get to InDesign. The other cool thing we can do is type on a path. So I'm just gonna clear up my screen here a little bit. First thing you have to do though is have a path. So I'm going to take my pen tool and I'm just going to make a wavy line. And there it is. So here's our path. Take your type tool. And again, I'm going to pay attention to my sizes up here first. I'm centered. So if I click in the center, wait till your cursor turns into the wavy line going through the insertion point. And if you click, your type is going to show up, and because it's centered, mine is going to push to the left and the right equally. So hang on, you are on a cliff, dude. Hello. I'm just typing a bunch of stuff. Okay, so remember we also have our left point, we have our right point, we can push it back along here, and when we click away, the path itself disappears. It's not a printing line, it's just a path that we use to set type. So we can also set type on a circle, and we can have the type being on the outside of the circle or pushed into the inside of the circle. And you'll actually see that when you work on your homework. So type, very much like we're used to seeing. The good thing about doing type in Photoshop is that if your type is kind of artwork, like maybe the heading of your movie poster or something like that, the title of your movie, there's so many cool art things that we can do within Photoshop and effects that perhaps that's how you definitely want to create that is in Photoshop. But as far as body copy, you're going to want to think about doing that in other programs. If what you're creating has a lot of body copy, probably going to want to build it in InDesign instead, or Illustrator. Okay, you can close that file, and we don't need it. And I'll talk about your homework next.